All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our first Cross Ecosystem Roundtable Talk. And today I'm going to be your host. My name is Adam Dean. I primarily do a little bit of everything around Cardano, from development to governance and everything in between. And I'm joined by a great panel today. But I'll let them introduce themselves and let's just go around the horn. So, Hinson, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. So this is Hinson. It's my honor to be here today. And I'm the co-founder of Delta DeFi and Sedan Lab. And we are the two entities, we're the same team. We're essentially doing three things. So first thing, Delta DeFi is a performance that's built on Hydra in Cardano. And in Sedan Lab, we build open source toolings and host local meetups for Hong Kong and Cardano. In terms of governance, I think we are part of a little bit of everything. Like in Sedan Lab, we also help building the tools for governance toolings in Cardano open source. And also we are SPO and DREP and writing proposal ourselves. Pretty much a little bit of every role in Cardano over the ecosystem. Yeah, I'm happy to join all of you guys to discuss this topic here.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. B?
Hi, everyone. I'm B, and I also do a little bit of everything that is not developer related. So I am a Cardano community ambassador. I'm also a community member, obviously, and I work for a company called Blockfrost. We do APIs on Cardano. And previously, I was on the Constitutional Committee alongside Adam for a consortium called Atlantic Council. And I also, on top of that, have my own project where I work with educating women on Web3 and Cardano specifically. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, B. And now welcome to Karam, our first Polkadot member.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. This is Karam Al-Hamad. I'm the governance lead at the Web3 Foundation, where I work with the governance team on several initiatives in relation to Polkadot and Kusama, OpenGov, including decentralized voices, Kusama vision, and our most recent decision to vote on Treasury proposals. Before joining Web3 Foundation, I worked in other ecosystems in the Web3 space since 2017. And before that, I spent almost 10 years of my career working as a grants manager and research analyst with initiatives that are building in the international development space. So focused on reconstruction efforts in countries experiencing crisis and so on. Super excited to be here with you guys.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. And so now Tommy, better known as Allison Bob.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, I'm part of the Polkadot community in contract with the Web3 Foundation, and we are OpenGov.watch. So our job is to help governance in Polkadot grow up. We provide a lot of insights by writing monthly reports, quarterly treasury reports. We hold community debates. We pick up on topics where we see there's some momentum and energy in the community, and we funnel them into constructive conversation. And yeah, so we have different kinds of initiatives every month to just carry the momentum in the right direction.
Amazing. Thanks for joining us. Jeeper.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for organizing the call. I'm also working with Tommy in OpenGov.watch. He's more on the connection side, more strategy side, and I'm more doing the research. I publish monthly reports on OpenGov, available on our website. And I also write specialized research on the bounties, which are actually the decentralized departments of Polkadot OpenGov. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Again, thanks for joining us. And last but certainly not least, Murasaki, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll kick this thing off.
Thank you, Adam. My name is Murasaki. Thank you for having me in this great roundtable. I work for Imago, one of the founding entities of Cardano, and I head governance, the ecosystem. So my background, obviously, I'm Japanese, so I think that's where Cardano had started. So when it comes to governance, I think I just did it like an hour ago, but bridging Japanese community that holds substantial voting power. So it's a pretty interesting dynamics. So when it comes to governance, I evaluate proposal, vote for proposal, working with community project to compose a proposal, and primarily sort of getting message across to Japanese community. So that's what I do. Thanks, Adam.
All right. Well, thanks to for all of our panelists for introducing themselves. And today, the point of today, I guess, is that often in the cryptocurrency space, we tend to silo ourselves, and we tend to think that our problems are somehow unique to us. But it turns out that there's actually long histories of people walking in the snow before us, and sometimes we can see that their trail leads off a cliff or it leads to the promised land. And so the idea behind these cross-table ecosystem talks is to share the knowledge and share the learnings and grow and learn together as an ecosystem, rather than treating everything as a zero-sum game. So Polkadot has had a decentralized and governance, community-governed treasury since 2020 when it first launched. And Cardano is now, I guess, ending its first year of really community-led on-chain governance. And specifically, we're talking about decentralized treasuries today. And so I want to, I guess, first and foremost, what do you guys think is, what's the definition of a decentralized treasury? Is it a 3 of 3 multi-sig? Like, is there a certain level that we need to get to before we can call it a decentralized treasury? What does that mean? And is it important to be stable, unstable? Where do we want to go? But let's first start with, what does a decentralized treasury mean to you? Anybody want to jump on that one? If not, we'll go to Hinson to start us off, because he recently wrote a Cardano improvement proposal to expand the Cardano treasury from just Lovelace to actually support multi-asset. So Hinson, what does a decentralized treasury mean to you?
Yeah, actually, it's still not a proposal. It's just a problem statement. Like, essentially, if the ecosystem want to have it, maybe it could be us or other people to implement it eventually. So going back to your question, what is decentralized treasury? From a point of view, like, we have to compare with the traditional treasury. Traditional treasury is somewhat like someone who everyone knows who they are, kind of managing a pot of money. And then for this administrator, essentially they have the discretion, or the owner of the money have the discretion on how to use it. But for a decentralized treasury, like what we have in Cardano or Polkadot, the money in the pot doesn't really belong to anyone, but it's an entire community. Somewhat, we all know who are the ADA holder, but we all don't know who are the ADA holders. They are just all over the place. Similar to Polkadot, like we cannot really to find the true owner of this treasury, but everyone is part of it. And every one of us have a say on how to use the money. Like most of our people, we use it with the same ultimate goal in our mind, which is to make the entire community to be better in some way. Like, different people got different version of how to become better and propose different stuff. Most people coming from the good intentions, and it really depends on the people in a mess somehow to discuss how we could better utilize this pot of money. Yeah, perhaps there's a brief intro, like high-level description. Yeah, any other people, yeah, can supplement.
Yeah, let's go over to Karam and see what does that mean, especially now with your 5-year history in the Polkadot ecosystem, of like, what does it really mean to have a community managed and decentralized treasury?
Yeah, I would like to take it to a different route than just numerical and quantitative, so to say. And I think a decentralized treasury is also that part of the protocol that usually admits that it does not know the future. Sorry if it's getting too philosophical. Whether that future is a runtime upgrade or a payment for infrastructure, research, public goods, etc. It's also, the treasury is the protocol admitting to cleaning its own mess in a way. So without a treasury, a protocol is just a bit on frozen genius, and with a treasury, it becomes a living institution with all the beauty and the risk that entails.
Awesome. And so I would like to ask everybody, because one of the big kind of talking points that I hear come up frequently is that the treasury needs to be sustainable. And I'm kind of a differing opinion. I don't think that treasuries need to be sustainable and live forever. I think if we sit on giant mountains of money and never spend them, then they don't do us a whole lot of good. But luckily, we have somebody with a little bit of firsthand experience there. So B, you come from Norway as one of your many homes, which is known for having its sovereign wealth fund. Do you think that a decentralized treasury needs to be long-term sustainable? Should it be a short-term runway for an ecosystem? What do you think?
I personally think that it has to be long-term sustainable. And with the Norwegian Treasury or Wealth Fund in mind, ours started around, I think it was 60s or 70s, where we discovered oil. And usually, like when countries discover oil, the first thing that they want to do is spend all the money. But the Norwegian government decided that we wanted to disperse the money that we got so that we were able to sustain the population. So we started investing in all the companies that you can imagine. Like we put money in almost everything, and that has paid off, where we are at the point where every single citizen in Norway can have at least, I think, $100,000 each if we were to like disperse everything in the treasury. So I personally believe that we need to be able to focus on more long-term, I think 10, 20 years, where we are able to use the money that is in the treasury. And a great example for this is during the recent pandemic, we were able to spend a lot of the money that was in the, or we have set like a minimum or a maximum of how much we can spend per year. I think it's like 10% or something, like very low number. But during the recent crisis, we were able to spend that much money on keeping the markets and keeping the Norwegian ecosystem or system, I guess, up and running, regardless of lockdown and people not being able to work and stuff like that. So that was really good. And in the recent years, with I guess we've taken up interest rates and stuff like that so that we can replenish what was spent during that time. So yeah, I do believe that we need to think more long-term with this example. And yeah, I sort of have to disagree with you, Adam.
Well, I guess that's the beauty of decentralized governance, is we're all free to disagree with each other. But yeah, so Alice, Bob, aka Tommy, why don't you tell us about the experience with kind of ecosystem sustainability on the Polkadot side, and maybe specifically how that relates to a multi-asset treasury, because I believe Polkadot kind of recently expanded to a multi-asset treasury.
Yeah, it's interesting, Dean, because like a little bit more than 1 year ago, I was sitting in a roundtable that was Polkadot specific, but the treasury, and I was saying the treasury is meant to be spent, but as long as you can meaningfully spend it. And I would say we have learned some lessons in the last year where I would make it even more specific. So maybe like you said, Murasaki, the treasury is not owned by anyone, but it is controlled by certain people, right? So the token holders, right? And so the people that are controlling the treasury, they either can be united in a purpose or they cannot be united in a purpose. Yeah. And so I think it is really, really crucial to invest the time to come to a common understanding of what are the objectives on which money is to be spent. Because if that is not there, there can be this sort of this group dynamic where if there is a certain momentum establishing, then everyone jumps on the momentum. And that is also with the velocity of spending. So if there is a high velocity of spending, then everyone tries to jump in and sort of get a share of what is being spent. Yeah. And if there is not common objectives and a clear common agenda of what the money is being spent on, then it goes in all directions and can be very quickly gone. Yeah. So if money is to be spent, the money, like, work on having those common objectives. That is a list, that is sort of the common agreement where token holders might have like a temperature vote. I don't know if you have that. But then if you have the temperature vote and you have those clear objectives, then you can work on that. My understanding is you have those sort of these agendas where a team can submit an agenda and then they get a budget allocation. But I think that is crucially important. And I don't know, at the moment, I feel more conservative about everything. I feel like in crypto, there's always a rush to go to market as fast as possible. And that could also sort of lead you into doing unreasonable things because you feel you need to compete with the market. And then, yeah, right. And then there was the multi-currency question. So there's two components to this. I think if you pay in the native token, it gives you exposure to the success of the network, which I think is important. But in the end, you need some of that in a stable currency because you need to pay your expenses. So I think it makes sense to either have a dual model. And then what we experienced in Polkadot is that sometimes people were coming for a top up because they did not sell the tokens. And then later on, when the price went down, they suddenly said, okay, we need more, please. And that's inconvenient conversations because it's sometimes you know what is the right thing to do, but it's also always not always clear what's the right move when someone asks for a top up. So I think having the opportunity to pay in stable currency is good because then if people just want to have their base cost, it's much more predictable and there's less trouble on the back end.
Yeah, awesome. I think there's also a little bit of dog fooding to be had there, where we're developing in cryptocurrencies and allegedly believe in them, but we want to get paid in US dollars rather than the crypto that was designed to break away from them. So it's a little bit ironic. But yeah, so you touched on something, Tommy, that I think was really interesting, which was how does the community budget and roadmap? And so I'm going to get to Jeeper in a minute, but I know Murasaki, you've been involved in a lot of like the Cardano community product and vision scoping and planning workshops. So how do you feel like Cardano is trajectory wise in terms of setting some of those high level community priorities and budgeting according to them?
Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to answer the question, and also the previous question was also there's something that I think I have an opinion. I'm sort of in the same league as you, Adam. I think treasury money doesn't really have to be spent for the sustainable purpose, but I might be too idealistic, but we end up sustainable. What I mean by that is, the more treasury money spent for the betterment of the protocol, the price of native currency, in our case ADA, price appreciates, so that ends up sustainable, even though that might be the primary objective. And I think your question, setting a roadmap and vision and strategy, even KPI for Cardano, led by product committee, is really a great example, because I hear from all the Japanese D-reps for the first round of treasury budget, they didn't really know what was the North Star for Cardano. So there were, mixed basket of proposal, some of them obviously related to the success of Cardano, increasing TBL or transaction, but some of them not so much related to the growth of Cardano. So I think Cardano did a really great job. Huge thanks to product committee, put a proposal out and actually working on KPI and strategy right now. The second year of treasury budget, I think, all the D-reps will have, almost like a North Star, like what this proposal related to, which KPI this proposal is going to fulfill, whether it's going to be a transaction increase that's going to bring more treasury budget back to Cardano, or indeed increase in TBL. So I think it is a great initiative for voters to have a perspective why we are voting for this proposal or that proposal.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. And so I'm going to throw, kind of a last question out as we go around the table, and then anybody else, of course, feel free to jump in on any of the previous questions as you see fit. But Jeeper, you and Tommy work for OpenGov.Watch. I assume you're kind of looking at everything happening in the Polkadot ecosystem around governance. What have you guys learned over the last 5 years in terms of proposals that are like successful, that are not successful? What does it mean to successfully manage a decentralized treasury as a decentralized ecosystem?
Okay, thanks for the hard question. I wanted to first answer the previous question because it's also related to this question, actually. You asked about sustainability, and I agree with B and Tommy about like the sustainability. And I want to take one more step, and I want to say the treasury doesn't only need to be sustainable, but it should also be plannable. Like how governments, like the nation state governments, are making these 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, 20-year plans. I think we should be able to make the same planning for the future, very far future, for most people in the crypto space. And yeah, basically the budget, like the importance of budgeting, because actually I found your opening statement about the topic a little dangerous, because you said something like the money is there to be spent, and we had a lot of these arguments, and that's, from my subjective point of view, that led to a lot of waste, because like people started to spend money just to sake of spending money, and then it created a huge waste in my eyes, to be honest. And yeah, this is the first part. The second part, you asked what did we learn. Maybe I shouldn't talk about all of them, but like maybe the most important one for me is the importance of accountability, because like when you have this waste, it creates a notion of injustice, a notion of like unfairness, because there are also people who didn't waste the money and who were against the waste. But then if there's no accountability, then you lose these people who are more idealistic and didn't participate in the huge waste. So I think that's the most important learning from my side. And yeah, maybe other people can adopt things.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I should mention that, Cardano has had Project Catalyst, which has been a smaller scale, decentralized, community governed kind of like budgeting and funding mechanism for the last 4 years at the very least. So, or maybe 5 even at this point. So yeah, we have had our learnings, and I think you're right. Accountability is a huge part of that. How do we hold people responsible for the amounts of money that they are bringing out of these treasuries to bring that value back? Whether that's via tokens or, as Murasaki pointed out, number go up, right? Number go up makes the sustainability a lot more of an easier problem. So, but milestones and reporting and accountability, who are you accountable to, and who holds you accountable? This generally leads to more bureaucracy, which leads to, in turn, more governance spending to watch the watchers. And this kind of tends to blow things up a little bit out of proportion. So if anybody wants to jump in on that kind of concept of milestones and accountability, feel free to do so. But I would love to hear kind of how you manage it, either personally or as an ecosystem on the Polkadot side, or on the Cardano side, or on your own projects. So anybody? I don't see any hands, so I'm going to call on Karam. How does that work in terms of accountability when you're getting a grant or money from the decentralized treasury on Polkadot?
Sounds good. Thank you so much for this question. I want to start first by addressing another element of like sustainability of the treasury, and then move on to discussing the milestones aspect of things. I think there are 3 major things to think about when thinking about treasury sustainability that might not just relate to numbers and so on. So we think about 3 main things in terms of Polkadot, or I personally now look at it this way. The first one is economic leak, which is overspending, misaligned incentives, etc. So civil service via treasury. And then there's the legitimacy leak, which is the perceptions of corruption, etc., etc. And then there is attention, which I think is the most important one. So most people, when thinking about treasury sustainability, it's mostly about numbers. I disagree. I think you can have a mathematically sustainable spending rate and still lose the plot because people stop believing the system is fair. So once legitimacy is gone, the runway doesn't really matter. People start exiting. So that's, to me, this is an important aspect to think about. And it would be nice to hear as well from the Cardano side, what do you guys think? Another aspect of treasury sustainability can be considered besides numbers, so to say. And then when talking about milestones, one thing to clarify, I don't know if we clarified at the beginning, but OpenGov is our Polkadot's advanced and community-driven decentralized governance system, which gives dot holders full control to propose, vote on, and implement changes. And all of that can be implemented on-chain, and it's fully automatic. So you can basically have a milestone payment set up on-chain and then automatically receive basically the payments if it's being set up on a month-to-month or 3 months, quarterly, etc., etc. We usually have the community and us, we're all like stakeholders in this system, review and look into the deliverables, and then basically either if we think that something is not being met, if a milestone is not basically being delivered, then the community can propose another referenda to basically close the payment. So, or like stop the payment for the second or the third milestone. We have flexible delegation. We have also conviction voting and other processes that allows for this process to become as easy as possible and as sustainable, I would say, for the ecosystem. But going back to Cardano, can you guys tell us a little bit more about, like, beyond numbers, how do you evaluate the sustainability of your treasury, so to say?
Yeah, well, I guess, I think the first funds that were not Catalyst, that were not withdrawn on behalf of the founding entities of Cardano, the first community-driven funds came out of the Treasury only in June. So we really haven't seen the long-term effects of our sustainability or how good or bad our collective decision-making is just yet as an ecosystem. I do know that, we've seen a lot of the same criticisms with Project Catalyst over the years. The same guys always get the money. They're wasting it. They're not bringing value to the ecosystem, blah, blah, blah. And so we've seen Project Catalyst and also like using that as a template, the Cardano on-chain governance kind of grow and evolve to follow the lessons from Catalyst, which is we need community kind of feedback and review of both proposals and milestones to make sure that they are met. We need to do milestone-based payments to ensure that we don't just give everybody a big bag of money and watch them right off into the sunset. But at the same time, we're still kind of learning and growing. So most people are using currently, if they get a Treasury withdrawal, they're using a Treasury management smart contract developed primarily by Sunday Labs and audited by several other community members, which is very similar. It's milestone-based payment, but you kind of name your auditors essentially that are going to be responsible for your milestone review, and that's the role of your budget administrator. But that's kind of where I was talking about, at least on the Cardano side. It seems like we get a lot of this bureaucracy because you end up having to pay the administrators or other people to care enough to give you the money out of your smart contract when you're dealing with like one of these multi-sig sort of scenarios. So it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg, because then you have to watch the auditors to make sure that they're, and the administrators to make sure they're doing their job. But then they request Treasury funding to do their job. And so I could see us potentially, in our own way, in our own, we love governance for the sake of governance way, spending 100 million to wrap an airplane or whatever with a logo. But in Cardano, we're going to do that by like just adding layers of bureaucracy to manage our governance. And so 6 of one, half dozen of another in terms of what the impact is. But yeah, I don't know, B, Murasaki, Hinson, like what's your experience been with Cardano governance so far? Murasaki, you want to take it?
Sure. I really like governance, first of all, but I think we have to admit the fact in this broader blockchain space, there are competing blockchain that make a decision like almost like a snap of finger. You know, whether they are right or wrong, like we don't need to argue about this, but we need to admit the fact, you know, this industry as a whole need, you know, extreme velocity to push, you know, things forward. So this kind of bureaucracy could be our advantage or disadvantage. I don't know this English word, but you know, I'm Asian Japanese, and we use chopsticks. So there's a word called like trying to pick a rice on the corner of your lunchbox. So like really caring about details, right? So I think that sort of, you know, really arguing or you know trying to pick up details is really slow down the development of the protocol or application or anything else. So I think there has to be a minimum auditing layer, which Cardano has already. But I think sometimes we need to have this mindset of, you know, here's the money, and this proposal is manifesting to achieve this with this amount of money. And then once that is achieved, we don't really care about how it's done, as long as it's done in a thoughtful and methodical and also kind of legal fashion. I think that mindset might be necessary because again, you know, this industry goes really fast. So I think that's really the perspective that I have. And for that to happen, I think voters in Cardano space, DREPs, also need to have good sort of business understanding. And I think the idea of, you know, allowing project or entrepreneurs or proposer to have some sort of a trust, right? So once you receive the money, they execute it, and there has to be a periodic checkpoint or auditing layer, but not so much questioning how it's done or, you know, challenging the details. So I think that's the perspective that I have for, you know, auditing and that kind of stuff.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, B, what's been your experience with kind of, I mean, I know you and I both served on the Atlantic Council as part of the Cardano Constitutional Committee, where kind of one of our top level things was making sure that the Cardano community doesn't exceed its set monthly budget. But other than that, like what has been your experience with the Cardano governance process so far? And how do you feel about like milestone versus other ways of distribution of funds?
Yeah, I honestly like the Cardano community coming up on our first year of having like a community budget. I think at the time when we started, it was a wonderful problem to have, because we are known to have a lot of issues in Cardano that we wanted to fix. And now that the Treasury actually allowed us to pinpoint those things, and everybody was allowed to suggest areas where they need improvement and that where they would be able to do it by suggesting a budget that for them to fix it in. I think that was wonderful. And I guess we'll be seeing the effects of that in the next 6 months or something. And we are going to start a new budget process now. But I honestly would really like to see us, as Murasaki was talking about, focus a bit more on specific areas. Of course, the first year where everybody being able to propose anything is really good. And I guess we were able to see where the leaks are. But again, back to like the sustainability, we can't constantly be spending money in all areas, because there's a big problem here or there's a smaller problem here, and the Treasury needs to fix X, Y, and Z. Because at the end of the day, I don't think the Treasury having to foot the bill for everything is going to be sustainable at all. And we need to look for maybe outside investors or outside participation, because that's a second thing that I believe will show how effective our treasury or spending is, if we're able to bring in more businesses from the outside world to actually invest in our projects here. And I know there are a few great examples. I guess Draper University and also Techstars have been doing that by helping our projects with like accelerator programs and stuff like that. I know Hinson was a part of that, and I think those things are good because it shows that we are making the Cardano community interesting for outside actors. And I really hope to see that we were able to bring more of those initiatives in the next coming years. And yeah, but also I think the past year has been sort of challenging because I don't know if you guys remembered, probably do, the whole voting system where we had to do like different layers of voting, and we lost a lot of DREPs because of voter fatigue. And I would love to avoid that as much as possible because like Muruzaki said, we are expected to participate in many things, but there are many things that we don't necessarily need to participate in, as long as we have the right people in positions where they're able to audit and make sure that the information that needs to go out to the community is there, and that we have the right tools where if I decide that I want to be able to audit and see if the people who we've given money to are actually doing the work that they said that they were going to do, without necessarily needing to put 20 hours into actually being able to audit that. So I think it's like there's a lot of improvement in the next coming season, and I really hope that we're taking all this learnings with us. But yeah, it remains to be seen.
Awesome. Thanks, B. Well, and speaking of learning, why don't I toss one over to Jeeper here? What has Polkadot maybe learned or experienced in terms of these same growing pains and like dealing with the bureaucracy of a self-governing ecosystem?
Thank you. I want to speak about the notion of bureaucracy because maybe not currently, but we had this like anti-bureaucracy narrative in Polkadot for some time, and I think it's not only limited to Polkadot, but more of like the crypto in general, because like these are people who are like got sick of the traditional forms of bureaucratic systems, right? But then I think it's important to like define what is bureaucracy here, because from my perspective, bureaucracy is a tool, and like every tool, like a knife, for example, you can use it to make a very good meal, or you can use it to attack people. So it's like it's a neutral tool in my eyes. And of course, like overly pushing bureaucratic systems might hurt the system as a whole, because then you have this overload of like reporting, etc. And then we see, for example, in Polkadot, some departments go 30-40% on the admin costs only, rather than like the actual work done. So even half of the budget is administrative costs, which is bad, obviously. But then you need some minimum standards, like you mentioned, Adam, like milestone payments, etc. And that's also a part of bureaucracy. So I think it's a relation you need to have, but of course you should control it and don't allow it to go extremes, because then you can end up with like 10 people doing all the bureaucratic work and deciding everything that is happening inside.
Awesome, thank you. And so I want to turn it over briefly to a community question that came from the comments here. And I believe this was from Cardano Wiki on X. What are the biggest challenges currently faced by decentralized treasuries in ensuring long-term sustainability? And so, Tommy, do you feel okay taking this one from the Polkadot side, and then maybe we'll give it to Hinson from the Cardano side?
Yep. So I started earlier with saying there should be objectives. Now, I would say the biggest threat would be if you have a majority of voters just approving a bunch of stuff that feels good, but then it does not have the immediate impact. So maybe to turn it around, I think very often we. So it's all about the discussion process and how do you arrive at the actual decision of what to spend. Yeah, and the way we have it in Polkadot, I think what is also something that I want to give some impulses to change it, is you can submit the proposal. So there is a discussion phase where people are debating the proposal, and then there is a submission. So, and the discussion phase is off-chain, and then the proposal submission is on-chain. Now, very often what you see is that there is almost no discussion in our space in the pre-proposal phase, because you're overwhelmed anyway. You have enough stuff to do. You don't want to read proposals that might not come on-chain. And then when it comes on-chain, the countdown starts, and you have to engage with it. But then very often it's sort of locked in, where then you say, I don't know, we want, like, the price doesn't match the agenda, so maybe we should either change the agenda or the price. But then very often we were in the situation where proposals said, yeah, but it's, you know, there is already this time pressure because of certain reason. And so it sort of created this artificial pressure to like take it or leave it. And there was not enough time to negotiate. So I think what I would love to see for us coming, that there is an on-chain proposal, like a discussion phase. And during the discussion phase, the parameters of the proposal can actually be changed. So there's actually, it's sort of already a countdown, but it's not locked in. It's not immutable. You can still mutate the proposal for a certain amount of time. So this way, the timer starts ticking. People can negotiate. But then if there is a need to change it, there is no excuse to say, we cannot change it. So maybe to zoom out a bit, I think the process is very important. To have sustainability, you need to have a proper process which leads you to make the proper decisions. Yeah? And I can just say it makes sense to invest looking at objectives. How do you measure the stuff? This is incredibly important, and have like as little objectives as possible, because it's really hard to arrive at those objectives. But and then it also takes leadership from people who go forward and say, work to get community consensus on those objectives, bring it on chain as a vote, and have this as a common agenda. And then also not take the current system as a given, but also think how you can innovate in the system and make the system itself better, right? So even if it's like immutable on-chain code, but in future upgrades, also the code can be changed, right? So I think those things are important.
Awesome. Yeah. And B made a comment here in our little like internal speaker chat that Tommy, you basically kind of just described our entire like Cardano budget journey for the past year verbatim. So it is really interesting. And that's why these cross ecosystem talks are so critical, is like we can see other people have already been here. They've already learned what we've learned. So we can learn and grow together by sharing these experiences. But let me turn it over to Hinson. What do you think from the Cardano perspective? What's the biggest challenge faced by a decentralized treasury in terms of long-term sustainability?
Before strictly addressing the question, like usually I think stuff in kind of logical manners. Like, given this goal is to ensure long-term sustainability, regardless of which definition of sustainability we're talking about, like the size of treasury, or just make sure everyone could continue using Cardano or the blockchain ecosystem forever. Like, everything will reduce into, we have to pick some really, really good proposals. Like for this proposal, put it into a mathematical equation, it's like adding the odd for these things from happening, which is doing net positive to the ecosystem, such that the treasury will be becoming bigger, or we have a lot bigger chance to run the ecosystem forever. And if we think about to pick proposal in that criteria, you find out the odds of picking good proposals is extremely difficult. Like, even we put every best intended people in the same room, we are more likely than not choosing the wrong decisions. Just by the fact that, going back to the ancient Greek time, like there's a very famous quote from, I forgot, Aristotle, like democracy is the worst system that you can have, because you eventually will have more average people making decisions for the nation states. And I think this is the ultimate biggest problem of decentralized governance. Like, if we equally weighted every people's opinion, there's a very good odds that we are going into, just a total destroy or destructions. So let's think about what is the potential positive features that we could attain this goal by picking good proposals. It's actually very counter human nature-ish. Eventually, you have to have a few kind of very good expert that understand every aspect of different kinds of proposal and asserting very strong opinion into we should do A rather than B, we should yes or no. But one extremely big problem with this picture is that it's not too practical, because if you look into the existing Cardano governance right now, think back to 39 proposals initially, like the first 39 Treasury withdrawal proposal, you find that it's in an extremely difficult position to say no to other people's, because opinions are everywhere and every voting is extremely transparent and open. Like, you know, a lot of people in the ecosystem, you know that one of your best friend is saying yes to something. If you say no, you have to face a tons of pressures to withstand with that. Like, eventually we see a pattern of people leaning towards saying yes to everything. But this is a big problem. Like, eventually, if imagine I'm an expert in something and I just don't think something will work out. So what is my best action to ensure the ecosystem like having a better odds to survive is that I have to assert my negative comment into something. But in a very behavioral way, this never gonna to be happen, because if I do it, pretty much I ruin a lot of reputation, I ruin a lot of human relationship, such that my next good faith proposal have a much less chance to get passed. So in order to maintain such good social position, I have to even to say yes something to something I don't agree. I think this is essentially what we are facing right now, or happening right now in Cardano, is that a lot of people finding it very difficult to say no to something. And eventually it's like everyone have different kinds of opinion in the same room. Like, even for most of our guys is really good or well intended to our ecosystem. Everyone have our perspective of how we should do good on our ecosystem. But eventually, because there are so many average opinions just fighting across each other, picking the little rice on the small proposals, but kind of cannot see from a larger perspective, eventually it's like we're choosing quite a lot of bad proposals. So from our point of view, it's like we are a D-Rep. Like we usually think about a mathematical way of voting different proposals. Like, for something that we say yes, we probably think there's a chance that, or there's a more likely than not, is a bad proposals. But there's a simple math. It's like, if we are spending the treasury not too fast to accept the margin of error, maybe having a potential future if some bad proposal passes through and there's some controllable damage to the ecosystem, such that the mass could learn something in the past experience, maybe we are still in better off, because we will raise the number of experts in the community, because more of us knows that what will work out, what will not. Like, eventually, this is my only kind of possible positive futures that I could see on Cardano is like try to be slightly more conservative on things. Even some proposals that we think that it might fail, just think a step forward. Like, will this failing experience benefit the wider wisdom of the community? Like, we sometimes from our CDAN left D-Web will also say yes to this kind of proposal. Like, not because of by our heart we have the same opinion with some proposals, but just that because they try to open up quite a lot of the details, steps in implementing the proposal, and also sharing back a lot of public data, it will be a good case study for the wider ecosystem. So in general, I think extremely difficult problem to solve.
Yeah, it's definitely no easy answers when you're trailblazing and trying this all out for the first time. But I mean, we're almost at the end of our time. You know, some of our panelists were worried we wouldn't be able to fill an hour, and now here we are at 15 minutes, and we're just getting into the good conversation, right? People finally got, but thank you, Hinson, you touched on something that Karam mentioned earlier, which is like the social capital aspect of decentralized treasury management that we hadn't even had a chance to touch on. And so real quick, I know Murasaki has another engagement right at the top of the hour. I want to go into a bit of a lightning round and get final thoughts from everybody. Are you bullish or bearish on decentralized treasuries and how these governance systems are going to work? And yeah, just final thoughts and thank you to the audience. So let's lead off with Murasaki. Go ahead.
I am bullish. I'm really fascinated about this concept. As far as Cardano goes, I couldn't believe this was going to happen. I started my career of Cardano back in 2017 September when ADA launched, and back then Charles was saying this, decentralized governance idea. It was very, very far away from reality. Cardano just launched and it just came true. So I think it's decentralized governance has a lot of possibility. And just touching on what Hinson said, I think maybe what's lacking right now is privacy, right? Because it's radically transparent. Like we know who's voting for what, and there's a lot of offline chat, probably like shake hands as well. Like I'm going to back you up, so please back my proposal up. But if the privacy is implemented, it's you don't lose your social capital because you don't really know, or no one knows like who's voting for what. So I think that's maybe some of the improvements that we can expect. But in general, I think this is a great idea, collaborative, and everyone's really tied up to the value of ADA because essentially, everyone own ADA and have bright future for ADA. So I'm really bullish, but there are definitely some improvements like Hinson mentioned.
Awesome. Thank you, Murasaki, for joining us today. And this one, we're going to go to Karam and Tommy here next. But so another community question that came in the chat that you guys might want to touch on real briefly if we can is diversification into stable coins or other crypto assets essential for long-term treasury health? And given that Polkadot has at least a little bit of experience with that, I would love a quick TLDR on your thoughts on this question as well as we do this little lightning round. So Karam, bearish or bullish on decentralized treasuries and decentralized treasury management and decentralized governance? And then, yeah, how critical do you think stablecoin diversification is for that long-term sustainability?
Thank you so much. Let's start by being a little bit humble on each other and ourselves. And I want to say that decentralized treasuries are both terrifying and necessary. Terrifying to me personally because we've seen how fast they can burn through money, trust, and attention. And we touch base on the idea that these three things are quite important for any treasury sustainability plans. And necessary because any protocol that wants to be serious has to work through its own mechanism for resource allocation. So from where I stand as an individual, let's say, I think I'm both bullish, short-term and long-term, because I think that we're seeing a lot of treasuries right now in the Web3 space that are moving away from acting like infinite venture funds and just paying for recurring civil service structures, so to say, without any clear sunset or plans. And also like the idea that voters are getting exhausted as well to keep up. So moving from there on the short term towards long term, I think what comes after, which is the idea of part spending caps, shorter funding cycles, shared ecosystem and cross ecosystem kind of like roundtables and conversations like the one we're having here, which we thank you so much for having today. And this culture and moving towards this culture of saying no as a sign of care rather than no as a sign of hostility. All of that makes me really extremely bullish on the long term. So if we treat treasuries like free money, I think they would fail. And if we treat them as what I like to say, like intergenerational trust capital, plus legitimacy, plus care, plus all the guardrails that we talked about, I think it becomes one of the strongest institutions we could build in this space. And then on the second point, which is on stablecoins diversification, I would like to leave it to Tommy now, if he wants to talk about it.
Yeah. So okay, it's two parts. It's into stablecoins and it's into other crypto assets. I would say for both, essential. It's just a question. If you diversify into other assets, you decorrelate the risk, which is maybe something you want to have. And then there is lots of arguments for it where you just need to debate them individually. But let's start with stablecoins. For stablecoins, it can be highly beneficial because very often people will want to have cash that they can spend. Yes, it's nice to have an upside, but in the end, you need to buy food. And if you're a service provider, you need to buy food, right? So, of course, I can request a crypto, and then I can use it to buy food. But if I request a certain amount of volatile crypto right now to be paid in the future, I don't know how much to request, because actually what I want is a certain amount of dollars or euros or another currency. So I think it's highly practical to offer this because it removes a lot of the problems. And there is a secondary benefit. So how we do it in Polkadot is we deploy this into an exchange where there is a dollar cost average swap. So we actually put this into active liquidity into the market, into a money market. And then over a DCA campaign that goes over a full year, it actually gets swapped into the stablecoin that we want to have. Yeah. And so while it is waiting to be swapped, we indirectly deploy it into the money market and increase liquidity, which is very helpful for DeFi projects. Can get political, of course, but this is a very nice secondary benefit that we're having. And then when it comes to other assets, it's more of a question of, do you want to decorrelate risk, and do you want to sort of go into all these debates? Because we had debates about, should the Treasury buy Bitcoin or ETH? And I think that was already in the discussion phase where it was sort of, there was a lot of headwind, tailwind, so like wind against you. And so we ended the discussion there. I think one argument to make is when you say we want to increase, for example, Bitcoin liquidity or ETH liquidity or whatever, you can go into those specific arguments, and I think that is much more digestible for people if there is an actual need. But if you want to buy Bitcoin, you have all of these debates of, is it the right point? Because Bitcoin is so high or Bitcoin is so low, or our token is so high or our token is so low, and sort of it can be a lot of wasted time also. So, but I think if people feel there is a good need, it's interesting to go through that argument and have it as a community debate.
Okay, so real quick, lightning round, Tommy, while we still got you, bearish or bullish on decentralized treasuries and their management and processes?
Yeah, absolutely bullish. And I think sort of what we are not yet have explored a lot is forming micro-DAOs with my friends, and what you have with Splitwise when you have an app where you're splitting costs. I think this is where we should start, because this is where you develop the cultural elements of what is actually necessary if we want to manage a small treasury, or if we have a team and so on, maybe small investment teams and so on. That would actually be a fun thing. So having tooling for that would actually be pretty good. And then your token holders, you have governance just by having a token. So, and treasury is just an extension of having common governance.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for joining us. So B, what do you think? Is Cardano going to make it? Bearish or bullish on this whole decentralized treasury and governance experiment that we're all on together?
That's a very loaded question, but yeah, I am bullish. But like I mentioned earlier, I want to see more actors invest in the ecosystem, and I believe the fee structure that we have today is not going to be sustainable at all. in the long term. And I don't think it was meant to cover all of these things from the beginning. So if we are able to come to a point where we are actually bringing more money into the Treasury than we're taking out every year, that would make me very happy. And I know we are exploring different ways of distributing funds from the Treasury. I know, like the SNEC proposal, where they're actually getting a loan from the Treasury, not necessarily getting money. I think that's a very fun way of trying to explore how we can actually bring back more than what we take. So I am bullish, but I also want to see us be more creative about the way that we are spending money, because again, this is the first year. I can't like judge everything upon what we've done this year, but there is a lot of improvement in I believe. And I know Murasaki did mention earlier that we are focusing on working on some vision of what we're going to spend money on in the next 5 years with the 2030 vision, which I'm very excited about. I have been in a few workshops and actually tried to figure out what is necessary for Cardano to be at a point where we are serving not just the Web3 community, but also Web3. So yeah, there are so many points that I wanted us to discuss here, and I don't think this 1 hour was enough. But yeah, I am fairly bullish, and I think we're gonna get there to a point where we actually are sustainable.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you and or more of our other esteemed guests here will join for maybe Cross Ecosystem Roundtable V2. I'm sure Denicio and team will be looking at that coming up. But Jeeper, real quick, we're at the top of the hour. I know people have other obligations to get to. Bearish or bullish on this whole governance thing? How you feeling?
So you asked about like decentralized treasury management, but I want to take it a little bit more abstract and talk about decentralized management in general. I think it's a continuation of like thousands of years old of human sociopolitical development, and I see this as a direction in general. So I cannot say I'm bullish or bearish. I'm more of, if you want an animal, I'm more of a crab. But I believe in long-term sustainable and stable development rather than bullish or bearish vibes. So, but I think it's a part of our evolution as human beings, to be honest.
All right. Well, bonus points to you, Jeeper, for bringing the third animal, the infamous crabbish, into the mix. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't but a few months ago. I remember sitting on a beach in Vietnam with Hinson talking about how this whole governance thing would be a lot more efficient if you just gave all the money to me and let me figure out who gets it, right? Versus all this voting and everything else. But Hinson, what do you think? Quick takeaways. Bearish, bullish, are we going to make it? What do you think?
Yeah, on that beach talking, I still think it's true. Just it's a mathematical questions. So yeah, now there's a live demonstration of the pressure, like everyone is in general bullish. It's quite difficult for us to not say bullish. But indeed, I'm more of a neutral position, I would say. Like I'm definitely starting from the bearish position. Like same again, it's a pure mathematical question. It's just extremely difficult to do it right the first time. Like we have the system, like just airdropped it into our ecosystem earlier this year, and then we have to figure out all these things. And then, yeah, hopefully we will run into a sustainable ecosystem. This mathematically is extremely difficult to happen the first time we try it. But there are some good things I've seen from the Cardano ecosystem that make me slightly moving towards more neutral or bullish. Is that I can see the ecosystem agility is quite high. Like we're starting from the initial phase where Interset try to wrap everything, and then people say it's too bureaucratic, and then try to crack it down, and then Interset is agile enough to just break it into smaller pieces, requesting smaller funds, and then allowing more community intervention into part of the processes, trim down the meeting, everything. This is quite impressive to me. Like if you think about the very wider ecosystem perspective, like we can move and change in that speed. It's not that easy. Like as a final remark, I just want to echo to the points that Polkadot ecosystem mentioned. I think in order to make it right the first time, there's one very important prerequisite, mostly for those people who care about decentralized governance and decentralized treasury. Just in general, don't lose faith into this thing. Like for all the best things that we are seeing, it's a necessary processes. Like if we have all the best intended people just lose faith in the middle and then leave in the ecosystem, probably we are doomed. So for whoever you're really watching this and you think you really love Polkadot or Cardano and being so frustrated about all the stuff, just don't quit. Keep saying loud on your perspective to the ecosystem. I think this is the only chance that we can make it right the first time, which is a kind of miracle. And we have a non-zero chance seeing this. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Hinson, and thank you to all of our panelists. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today, but hopefully you follow the channel, you follow all of our great speakers on their X or other social medias. And we'll see you for the next Cross Ecosystem Roundtable Talk. Thanks all.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.